If every data center on Earth vanished this exact second, your smartphone wouldn't just lose its connection to Instagram.
Right. No, that would be the least of your problems.
Exactly. I mean, within 24 hours, the entire global supply chain would completely freeze.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to buy groceries. The screen in your hand would literally just turn into a dead piece of glass.
It is wild. The real catastrophe would be out your window, not on your screen. So welcome to the deep dive. Today is Saturday, May 30, 2026, and our mission today is to unpack this massive, largely invisible foundation of modern life.
Which has suddenly, become this massive flashpoint for intense political, environmental, and social debate.
It really has, and we are exploring this today using a comprehensive document we have called Our Data Centers Bad.pdf. It's this fascinating text exploring the history, the resource footprint, the public perception, and the philosophical implications of these massive facilities.
Because it is the ultimate invisible infrastructure. I mean, we are dealing with a civilizational dependency that is entirely hidden from the average person.
Right.
But it operates on the exact same level of critical importance as the electrical grid or, your local water treatment facility.
Yeah, most people think of a data center and they just assume, well, it's a sterile room where websites live.
Exactly. But they are actually the literal nervous system of global commerce, communication, and increasingly human cognition itself.
Which brings us to the stakes of this deep dive. I mean, think about how many times you've already interacted with a server farm today just by listening to this.
And our goal here isn't to demonize them or glorify them either. It's to impartially map out this tension. The tension between the immense value they provide and the massive resources they extract.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the document drops a thought experiment that is just, I mean, it's terrifying. The total disappearance scenario.
The timeline of collapse.
Right, so if every server farm blinks out of existence right now, the first few minutes are obvious. Email fails. Streaming stops. ChatGPT is gone.
All those massive networks from Microsoft, Amazon, Google, they just vanish.
And a lot of people think, well, the internet is down, but my computer still works. I can just work locally.
Yeah, and that is the grand illusion of modern computing. People look at the laptop on their desk and assume it is this self-contained brain.
Right, like it's all in the box.
Exactly. But modern software architecture just doesn't work like that anymore. We've shifted almost entirely to cloud-based APIs.
So even basic stuff breaks.
Oh, completely. You open a basic writing app, and it might look local, but in the background, it's pinging a server to authenticate your subscription, right?
Oh, wow, yeah.
And pinging another to load your custom fonts, and another to sync your keystrokes to a cloud backup. When those external servers vanish, the local software simply hangs and crashes.
Because it's waiting for a response that isn't coming.
Exactly. The computer spends all its processing power waiting for an answer.
So the apps freeze in the first 10 minutes. But let's advance the clock a bit. What happens in the first few hours?
This is where it moves from an inconvenience to a systemic global crisis. In the first few hours, the financial systems begin failing.
Because modern money isn't just physical gold sitting in a vault.
Right. Modern money is literally nothing more than a verified entry in a centralized database.
That's crazy to think about.
It is. If you walk into a store to buy a bottle of water and tap your credit card, that terminal routes a signal through a payment gateway which pings a clearinghouse, which queries the data center of your bank to verify that you actually have $3.
And without the data center, that verification loop is just completely broken.
The stock markets freeze too. High-frequency trading algorithms have no exchanges to connect to. Payroll systems crash.
Wait, so payroll fails immediately?
Yeah, because the automated clearinghouse, the ACH networks, they require centralized batch processing.
And the terrifying part of this scenario is that your money still legally exists, right? You haven't actually lost your life savings.
Oh, exactly. The money legally exists. You still have that $1,000 in your checking account. The bank knows you theoretically have it.
But they physically cannot verify the balance?
Nope. You can't even withdraw cash at an ATM because the ATM is just a dumb terminal waiting for a server to give it permission to spit out bills.
Commerce just grinds to a halt.
An absolute halt. And by the first day, communications fail. And we aren't just talking about losing iMessage or video conferencing.
Right. We're talking about the actual routing of the internet.
Yeah, the foundational routing protocols like BGP, the Border Gateway Protocol. It's essentially the postal service of the internet. It tells data packets the most efficient path to travel.
And those routing tables live in data centers.
They live on massive routers inside those facilities. When they go down, the literal map of the internet ceases to exist.
See, someone might push back and say, well, I'll just use my cell phone, like a traditional cell tower. That's not the cloud.
They might think that, but traditional cellular networks increasingly rely on cloud-backed, software-defined networking to manage load and route texts and calls.
So even if the local cell tower has backup battery power,
The switches connecting it to the rest of the country live in data centers. The cellular networks would buckle under the strain within a day.
so that's day one. By the first week, the physical world starts to physically break down. Logistics become chaotic.
Modern logistics is essentially just a massive data operation attached to some physical trucks and ships.
Right, like a global shipping port.
Think about the movement of a single shipping container. It requires a highly orchestrated dance of GPS routing, automated crane scheduling, customs database verification,
And all of that is in the cloud.
all of it. If the server goes down, the Port Authority loses visibility into what is inside any of the 10,000 containers sitting on the dock.
So warehouse inventory fails.
Mm.
A grocery store might have food for a day, but the regional distribution center has no way of knowing which store needs milk.
And the truck driver has no routing software to get the milk there anyway.
It's a complete severing of the economic nervous system. But we have to talk about the critical infrastructure too, because this is the hidden stuff.
Right, the utilities. Electrical grid monitoring, water treatment.
How does the electrical grid rely on a data center?
Well, we operate on a highly complex grid where supply has to perfectly match demand at every single second. Grid operators use massive computing power to balance that load.
Like predicting when a neighborhood will turn on their air conditioners.
Exactly. And adjusting the output of a natural gas plant hundreds of miles away to compensate. Without that real-time telemetry, you get cascading blackouts.
In healthcare, I mean, that's even more immediate. Electronic medical records become inaccessible.
A patient comes into the ER, and the doctors have zero idea what their blood type is or what allergies they have.
Because it's all on a centralized server. Now, obviously, local backups exist, right? Hospitals have generators and paper backups.
They do, but those fail-safes are strictly designed to keep things stable for a few hours, maybe a day. They cannot run indefinitely.
Right, you can't run a modern hospital on paper charts for a month.
You'd have mass casualties.
So, in the middle of this absolute collapse, the text points out what actually does survive. And this is fascinating. Calculators work. Physical books. Printed maps.
Cash, if you can find it.
Yeah, cash. And oddly enough, a laptop from 2005.
Right, a laptop from roughly 2 decades ago, loaded with locally installed software, would survive.
Like an old version of Microsoft Word or a CD-ROM.
Because the architecture of software back then was monolithic. The entire program lived physically on the spinning magnetic hard drive inside that specific machine.
So what does this all mean? If my 2005 laptop survives, but my 2026 smartphone is a brick, did we actually make our technology more fragile by centralizing it?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is the great paradox of modern computing. The original internet, ARPANET, was explicitly designed to survive the loss of individual nodes.
Like in a nuclear war.
Exactly, it was decentralized. But modern efficiency has concentrated everything into these massive cloud providers.
We traded resilience for speed.
We did. Society wouldn't collapse entirely in this scenario, but it would become drastically slower and hyper-localized.
It's a staggering trade-off. Now, to understand how we became so completely dependent on these centralized rooms, we have to look backward. They didn't just appear out of nowhere.
No, they evolve.
Right. So let's take a look at the ancestors of the data center. Because before electronic computers in the 1890s, institutions still needed to process massive amounts of information.
The U.S. Census, banks, militaries.
And how did they do it? They used rooms full of human clerks.
The architectural function of that room, receiving data, storing it, processing it, sending it, was exactly the same as a modern server farm.
It's just human synapses instead of silicon. And the text highlights Herman Hollerith's punch card systems for the 1890 census.
That was the first mechanical information center. Hollerith realized it would take a decade just to count the census by hand.
So he used cardboard cards with holes punched in them.
Right, and he built these reading machines with spring-loaded metal pins. Wherever there was a hole, a pin dropped through into a pool of mercury to complete an electrical circuit.
It's brilliant. And his company eventually became IBM. So that was the mechanical era. But World War II really changed everything, didn't it?
WWII was the true leap to electronic computation. The military suddenly needed unimaginable processing power for ballistics and, most importantly, code breaking.
Like Colossus at Bletchley Park in 1944.
Exactly. Colossus is a strong contender for the first true data processing center. It wasn't for business. It was built to break encrypted German communications.
Right after the war, we get ENAC in the United States.
ENAC is the physical ancestor of the hyperscale data center because of its requirements. It required specialized electrical power, massive cooling infrastructure because the vacuum tubes ran incredibly hot.
And dedicated maintenance staff.
Yeah, to replace the tubes blowing out daily, plus strictly controlled security access.
Which are the exact same requirements as a modern hyperscale data center. It's the same DNA.
Completely. And as we move into the 1950s through the 1970s, we enter the mainframe era. This is where corporate adoption really starts.
But computers were incredibly expensive back then.
Millions of dollars for a single machine. You couldn't possibly give everyone a computer, so you built a special, highly protected room, and you brought the work to the machine.
Which led to a pivotal architectural invention in the 1960s, the raised floor.
It sounds mundane, but it solved a massive thermodynamics problem. You have heavy power cables, network wires, and immense heat.
So they built a false floor.
Elevated on perforated tiles. They ran the cables underneath, but more importantly, they pumped freezing cold air from industrial air conditioners under the floor, pushing it up directly into the intake vents of the computers.
And if you walk into a server farm today, you see the exact same layout. So it's like a town well, right?
How do you mean?
Well, in the beginning, digging a deep well for fresh water is so expensive that the whole town shares one in the center of the square. It's the same pattern as grain storage in the ancient world, or factories in the Industrial Revolution. We centralize our most valuable resource.
That is a perfect analogy. You centralize the scarcity. But here's the fascinating part. Even though computation centralized early on, for most of the 20th century, the average person was completely oblivious to these rooms.
Completely invisible. Why is that? Why didn't a citizen in 1975 have any idea where their data lived?
Mostly scale and exposure. People didn't own computers. They knew banks had them or NASA had them, but the plumbing was hidden.
And a 1970s computer center consumed very little total societal energy compared to today.
Right. A modern smartphone has vastly more compute power than an entire 1960s mainframe center. They were a rounding error on the electrical grid.
So the political fears were different. In the 50s and 70s, people feared automation, job loss.
Where in the 80s, they feared corporate power over databases, surveillance.
They worried about what computers knew, not what computers consumed. Nobody was protesting the water usage of an IBM mainframe.
Because it wasn't a threat to the local aquifer yet. But the text brings up a fascinating, counterintuitive point here. Those older, slower systems had hidden advantages.
Yeah, the friction.
In 1965, a bank transfer took days. That friction natively reduced the speed of fraud and limited financial panics.
And news spread slowly, which limited mass misinformation. Local commerce mattered more because you couldn't instantly order something across the globe.
Wait, so the trade-off is decentralized resilience versus centralized efficiency. Are we saying that by speeding everything up to milliseconds, we've essentially removed the friction that used to protect us from systemic panics?
Absolutely. Data centers are force multipliers. They amplify whatever society chooses to do with information.
Both the truth and the falsehoods.
Exactly. The historical tension isn't about computers. It's the ancient tension between local resilience and global efficiency. And for 20 years of the internet age, from roughly 2000 to 2020, this infrastructure remained totally invisible. Services like Google, Netflix, and Amazon just felt like weightless magic.
Even during the COVID lockdowns, the entire white-collar workforce went home, and the infrastructure was hidden behind the convenience of Zoom.
But then the curtain was pulled back. Generative AI fundamentally changed the public's psychological relationship with computation.
What's fascinating here is that before AI, the computer was just a tool. It stored a photo, it sent an email.
But with tools like ChatGPT, the computer appears to be thinking.
Yes, when a machine occupies a role that used to belong to humans, like a tutor or writer, people suddenly care about where it lives and what it consumes.
I mean, think about a standard Google search. You type weather tomorrow, and you get a static forecast. It's retrieving data.
But generative AI is entirely different.
Right. You type, write me a poem about dragons, and it creates a net new creation. The transformation is so dramatic that people naturally wonder, what is happening behind the scenes to make that possible?
And what's happening behind the scenes is an unprecedented scale of hardware. AI changed the math.
Adding servers used to just be incremental, based on user growth.
But training a large AI model requires tens of thousands of specialized chips, called GPUs, operating continuously for months.
And GPUs demand massive electrical capacity.
Massive electricity, and therefore massive cooling, which means massive water. This scale turned data centers into strategic geopolitical assets.
It's not about software engineers anymore, it's infrastructure engineers.
Mm.
Who has the power, the GPUs, and the grid capacity?
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's just like the industrial era.
The smoke analogy.
Yeah. In the early industrial era, people loved the trains and the cheap clothes. They didn't think about the factories. It was only later they noticed the coal smoke and the pollution. For 20 years, we loved YouTube. Now with AI, we're finally looking at the digital factories and asking about the smoke.
And looking at that smoke has led to intense scrutiny. But to truly understand if this backlash is justified, we have to look impartially at the moral ledger of computation.
The actual threats versus the undeniable value. Okay, let's open up that ledger. Let's start with the threat side. What risks do these facilities pose?
The most systemic threat is grid stress and electricity.
Right, the International Energy Agency projection. They estimate that by 2030, global data center electricity consumption could double to 945 terawatt-hours.
Which is almost 3% of total global electricity use. It's staggering.
But the real danger is the local concentration.
Right, they cluster in places like Northern Virginia or Ireland. When you drop 3 massive AI data centers into one county, it causes severe grid vulnerability.
Which leads to the second threat on the ledger, utility bills and carbon, because of the socialized cost problem.
Even if a tech giant pays for its own power, ratepayers often absorb the cost of grid upgrades, the new substations, the high-voltage lines.
You see your residential bill go up to subsidize an AI facility. And the carbon. A 2024 study showed U.S. data centers accounted for over 4% of U.S. electricity, and 56% of that came from fossil fuels.
Generating over 105 million tons of CO2 equivalent. They need 247 baseload power, so they keep coal and gas plants running.
Then there's water and land.
Water is highly nuanced because it's location dependent.
Right.
Only 14% of water-cooled centers use over 16 million gallons a year. But if you place them in a drought-prone area, it's highly problematic.
And the land use creates the neighbor problem.
The noise from the industrial chillers, the visual blight, the transmission lines disrupting rural character, people hate living next to them.
And the final threat is opportunity cost. Every megawatt given to a server farm cannot be used for hospitals, EV charging, housing, or heat pumps. It's a zero-sum game locally.
It is, but that is only half the ledger. We have to look at the value side. What do they actually give us?
Well, massive upsides. Critical infrastructure, for one. Hospitals, banking, emergency response networks.
Economic coordination, the supply chains and airline schedules we talked about.
Education, social connection. But AI brings a new promise too, right?
Yeah.
Scientific acceleration.
Absolutely. AI data centers are promising breakthroughs in drug discovery, climate modeling, medical imaging. That is immense public value.
So how do we calculate the net positive or negative?
The document categorizes them. Critical infrastructure, like hospitals and banks, is a strong positive. Society needs it.
Productive convenience, like remote work or search engines, is a positive.
But then there's the margin of waste. This is where the outrage is justified.
Speculative or low-value AI.
Right. Spam generation, deep fakes, algorithmic engagement bait, SEO sludge.
But, I mean, if you're asked to tolerate higher utility bills and local grid strain so that hospitals can run efficiently, you'll say yes.
Of course.
But what if you're tolerating rate hikes just so an AI can generate 1 million fake images of celebrities eating spaghetti? How do we legally or technically separate the medical breakthroughs from the digital noise?
That is the core of the debate, because from an engineering perspective, data centers are not one moral category. They are just physical containers for human priorities.
The server doesn't care what it's computing.
Exactly. The outrage isn't about the building itself. It's about the fear that we are sacrificing public resources for disposable, corporate-owned noise.
And this outrage isn't theoretical. It's happening right now in very specific physical locations. The geography of this anger reveals exactly how society is reacting.
To map it out, the source uses a two-axis framework of public opinion, dependency on data centers versus exposure to their physical burdens.
Let's look at Region A, Northern Virginia. This is the mature hub.
Places like Loudoun and Prince William County, they have high dependency and incredibly high exposure.
They used to love the tax revenue, but now they face visual blight, noise, and facilities being built right next to schools. In March 2025, Prince William County actually ended some of their by right approvals.
Developers can't just build without permission anymore, and a 2026 poll showed Virginia voters' comfort with new data centers plummeted from 69% in 2023 down to just 35%.
People are exhausted by them. Then we have Region B, rural northern New England and Appalachia.
This is high use, low exposure. They rely heavily on the internet for telehealth and remote work, but they don't host hyperscale campuses.
Yet, a Gallup poll in May 2026 found 70% of Americans oppose AI data centers in their local area. 70%.
The outrage there is more abstract. It's a fear of corporate power and climate impact rather than an immediate zoning fight.
And then Regency, Arizona, and Coachella. These are the emerging conflicts.
In late 2025, Chandler, Arizona unanimously rejected an AI rezoning proposal.
Because of water and noise concerns in the desert. And in May 2026, Coachella residents protested a 450-acre tech campus. Here, the outrage is preventative. It's deeply focused on local water and heat vulnerabilities.
And this pans out globally, too. Look at Ireland. In 2024, data centers consumed an astonishing 22% of national electricity.
22% of an entire nation's grid.
It created a massive debate about a hidden data center tax on household bills.
And in the Netherlands, they're blocking Meta's Zeewold facility because of land use and sustainability.
In Chile and Uruguay, the primary conflict is water rights. A Chilean environmental court actually restricted a Google permit over aquifer impacts.
And Singapore represents a completely state-managed approach. They imposed a hard moratorium in 2019.
And now they've pivoted to a highly controlled, efficiency-focused approval process.
So this isn't just local NIMBYism, not in my backyard. It's a combination of local exposure to the burdens layered with a growing national skepticism about big tech's promises. But how do we historically categorize this? What is a data center really like?
To make sense of this new civilizational infrastructure, the source compares it to a fascinating array of historical public works.
These analogies are incredible. Let's go through them. First, railroads.
Railroads collapse distance and coordinate markets, just like data centers. But they also create monopolies and fierce local land conflicts.
Electrical grids. They're like power plants. The hidden nervous system of life. We desperately want the lights on, but we don't want the coal plant next door.
Highways. Highways promised freedom but caused massive sprawl and destroyed neighborhoods. Will data centers be viewed as essential but permanently damaging to local landscapes?
I love this next one, dams. A dam floods a rural valley to provide electricity to a city hundreds of miles away.
It's about local sacrifice for distant benefit. A data center burdens a local grid to serve global cloud users.
Sewers.
Invisible when they work, but if they break, the city collapses instantly.
And finally, libraries and printing presses. This is the positive angle. They are the memory of civilization and the great multiplier of knowledge.
So when you synthesize all of that, data centers are the factories of the information age, powered by the grid, organized like railroads, socially invisible like sewers, politically contested like highways, and culturally transformative like the printing press.
That is quite the resume. But if we are in the late railroad or early factory regulation stage, as the text suggests, where the harms are just becoming visible enough to politicize, how will history judge us 50 years from now?
That is the ultimate question. A future historian will likely look at 3 eras of compute. Phase 1 was the 1990s through the 2010s, the invisible utility era.
Phase 2 is right now, the 2020s and 2030s, the acceleration era, full of AI hype, energy burn, and moral ambiguity.
And Phase 3, the 2030s onward, will be the sorting era, where society finally separates critical public interest compute from manipulative waste compute.
So looking back from the future, there are 2 contrasting views. The optimistic view is the cathedral. Future people will look at early anti-data center protests the way we look at people who opposed electrifying the countryside.
They will see them as the foundation of human flourishing. They enabled fusion research and climate modeling.
But the pessimistic view is the coal plant.
Right. Future generations will judge us for building energy-hungry facilities in water-stressed regions, using fossil fuels to power infinite loops of AI spam, and socializing the grid costs while letting private companies keep the profits.
Which brings us to a profound line from the text. The early AI era confused more compute with more wisdom.
Data centers are not inherently bad. Ungoverned computation is. If we solve clean power, ensure public benefit, and establish compute ethics, these facilities become the great public works of the 21st century. If we don't, they become the coal plants of the AI age.
It's like building the most magnificent library in human history, but letting the builders burn down the surrounding forest to keep the reading lamps lit, and then filling half the shelves with junk mail. The library is great, but the execution needs work.
That perfectly captures the reality of where we are today.
Well, I want to thank you for helping us navigate this incredibly complex and timely topic. It is a lot to process. But as you interact with your phones today, we hope you visualize that massive physical infrastructure working silently behind the glass.
It really changes how you look at the internet.
It does. Now, I want to leave you with a final unmentioned thought to mull over. The source compared data centers to public libraries, the keepers of human memory. But libraries are public trusts. Data centers are owned by private for-profit corporations. If all of our culture, history, and scientific data is physically stored on private servers, what happens decades from now if a tech giant simply decides that storing humanity's memory is no longer a profitable business model?
That is the question we will eventually have to face.
Do we need a publicly owned data center? Keep questioning the invisible systems around you. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us, and we will catch you next time.